Guys, so good to see you. I'm Jason. I'm a curate here at St. Peter's, and we've been doing a little short season on resurrection stories. And we looked at the disciples on the road to Emmaus last week with Rachel. And tonight we're going right to the end of the Gospel of John, so if you could return to that, John chapter 21. This is a curious incident right at the end of John's Gospel. And if you look at the end of the Gospels, different stuff happens. At the end of Matthew, you get this great commission, go and make disciples of all nations. At the end of Mark, you get quite an abrupt ending, when you get this tagged on bit, which is about making disciples and having authority, and there's some strange stuff about snake handling and drinking poison and not affecting you. At the end of Luke's Gospel, you get the ascension. And you get Jesus telling the disciples, wait until you receive power from on high. At the end of John's Gospel, you get a conversation between Peter and Jesus. And it's a bold conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation. And for those of you who've actually looked at your bulletins, I named tonight's talk, How to Get Naked. There won't be a practical demonstration, which you're quite pleased with, I'm sure. But there's something about in this passage, what happens beforehand is you get Peter actually has stripped off to go fishing again with a few of the disciples. He's out there in the boats, casting his nets, and he's stripped down to the waist. And then he sees Jesus, and Jesus has done this miraculous catch of fish for them. And he puts them back on his cloak and leaps into the water. And then Jesus, this is a strange part. That's why I love it. It's like after Jesus is raised from the dead, everything changes, but nothing changes. He's raised from the dead. He was crucified, and he's come back. It's like, whoa, who is this guy? He's God himself. But then he does normal things. He does his normal miracles. And then he does a barbecue on the beach. I love that about Jesus. It gives me great hope for the new heaven and the new earth. But there will be barbecues on the beach. Maybe with beer, I don't know. And so we have this passage after this conversation, which is difficult, and Peter's put his clothes back on, but then Jesus' questioning of Peter strips him, and it's not comfortable. Let's read it. Verse 15 of chapter 21. When he'd finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This is the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. This is the word of the Lord. So this is the beloved disciple who writes this stuff down, and it almost seems to me a little bit arrogant. You've got this questioning of Jesus, of Peter, saying, "Do you love me?" And then you've got a reminder who the really beloved disciple is, and it just seems like he's rubbing it in a little bit with Peter. I was a special one. I was a favorite. That's not what's happening here. But it is a picture of intimacy, and you have two different pictures of intimacy. And you've got John, the beloved disciple, a reminder of that evening where all of them said they were going to stick with Jesus, but none of them did. But there was one true traitor, and that was Judas. But we've got this picture of intimacy of a beloved disciple, John, leaning against Jesus' bosom, leaning against his chest, and reclining around this table. And it's this picture of intimacy. And we also have that married up with this questioning of Peter, and there's an intimacy that is restored now because there was a barrier, because there was a betrayal from Peter. And that's what Jesus is doing here. Do you love me? If you're in a relationship and someone has to ask the question, do you love me? Has there not been a breakdown in that relationship somewhere along the line? This is what Jesus is addressing. And if Jesus came to you today and said, do you love me? And looked you in the eye, would you hesitate? Would we be too busy if Jesus was actually here, taking out the perfume and pouring it over his feet and just going, yes, you're here. Yes, I love you. Let me show how much I love you. Or might our response be, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And would he ask again, do you love me? What would our response be? Jesus had good reason to doubt Peter's devotion. Does he have good reason to doubt ours? When it comes down to, this is the ultimate question that can be asked of any follower of Jesus. And it's a question that only God can ask of you. Because at the end of the day, it's only you and he who knows the truth of it. We can fool everyone in our lives. We can fool our church leader, our churches, our hub leaders, our friends, our family, our partners, our closest friends when it comes to being that passionate, sold-out follower of Jesus. But he knows all things. We can't fool him. So when he asks you that question, do you love me? Is there a hesitation in our heart? Down on the beach, after the betrayals, after the brutal death, after the resurrection, in the cold light of day, when it comes down just to you and him, how do you answer him? And what is the truth in your answer? Jason, son of David and Anne, do you love me? Yes, Lord. You know that I love you, but you know what I love more. And you know what I run to before I run to you to find security and satisfaction. Jason, son of David and Anne, do you love me? Jesus, you know that I love you, but you know so often you are not my first resort, but you are my last resort. And you know that I long to be a bold and courageous soldier of Christ, but there are times when I am slow to speak your name because I am embarrassed. Jason, son of David and Anne, do you love me? Jesus, you know how grateful I am for my family. You know how much I love you because what you've given to me, my close relationships. I love that. And you know there have been those seasons when I'm so passionate in running after you. And there are times, Jesus, when I'm apathetic, when I leave it all, when I'm just coasting. But Jesus, you know that I prize intimacy with you more than any other intimacy in my life. You know that I love you. And brothers and sisters, that's the truth of it. I love him. But my love is weak, and I want it to be stronger. How do you get naked with God? How do you get to that place of utter honesty with him, where you're holding nothing back, and when you don't avoid prayer, where you don't avoid worship, but you run to it because you can't help but do anything else? When you get to a place where the Spirit can bring that sense of looking at you with intimacy and asking, do you love me? And you're not afraid to answer. You're not afraid to bring yourself, your whole being, out into the light of Jesus, because you know your flaws, but you know that he knows your flaws, and everything has been paid for at the cross. So you know you don't have to be frightened of getting stripped down with God, of God asking you for tough questions, just like he asked Peter. And for Peter, this is a brutal nakedness. Jesus' spotlight was on him, and there's a place of pain for him to hear this. Jesus brings the darkness of his betrayal out into the light. He very deliberately, the first question is, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And Jesus is echoing Simon's statement on the night of his betrayal, where Simon said, even if all these fall away, I will not. So he's asked, do you love me? Do you truly love me more than these? And that causes Simon to pause and to remember, that's what happened on that night. I said this. I promised this. I said, I will not fall away, but I did, and I betrayed him. Sometimes the healing can only begin when the thing that you want to stay hidden comes out into the light. But you can trust him. You can trust him with this. You can let him ask the big questions of your heart. And you can trust that he is the lover of your soul. And if he wants to bring it out into the light, it's only so that he can heal you. And we don't have Peter. I kind of think that Jesus had to force this conversation, because we don't have the instance of Peter, after he sees Jesus raised from the dead, going straight up to him like he did when there was the first miraculous catch of fish in the other Gospels, where he falls at Jesus' feet, recognizing Jesus' holiness, and says, go away from me, Lord, because I'm a sinful man. Peter doesn't do that after resurrection. He doesn't go up to Jesus and say, I betrayed you. Go away from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man. We don't have that. Jesus forces this conversation, forces this confrontation, because he wants to build his church on this man, and he won't let this failure get in the way of that. Jesus needed to deal with it. I'm not sure that there's many of us as followers of Jesus who know how to be truly and utterly honest with God. And sometimes we keep our distance. We know this. We know, like Peter, that he knows everything. Still, we choose to hide. Still, we often choose the shadows. Goes back to the Garden of Eden, doesn't it? Where they were naked and they knew no shame. But then they ate of the fruit of a tree of good and evil, and all of a sudden they wanted to cover themselves. Were ashamed of their nakedness. And they went and hid. And you have God wandering in the garden and saying, Adam, where are you? Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? There is no need to hide from he who is the lover of our soul. You were made for intimacy with other human beings. You're made for intimacy with God. And the intimacy that exists in our close relationships, family, friends, partners, only exists because of the intimacy between Father, Son, and Spirit. And Jesus wants us to dwell in that place and won't let anything get in the way of that. He wants to deal with those barriers. And we can only really know true intimacy with another human being if we know intimacy with God first. Put another way, if you haven't really experienced true intimacy with God, you haven't experienced true intimacy with others. It's all modeled on this relationship between Father, Son, and Spirit. He doesn't want to exclude us from that. He wants to invite us in. And this isn't really a slap on the wrist. It's about having a deeper revelation of who you were made to be, and why Jesus wants to deal with the hidden stuff in our life, wants to deal with the sin that stops us walking in that place of intimacy, that stops us actually trusting him for who he is. Jesus isn't just reestablishing Peter's status as a rock on which he's going to build his church. He's reestablishing intimacy by taking the barriers away that were between him and Peter. We can only really give ourselves to others out of a depth of love that exists between ourselves and Christ. If we love Christ in a shallow way, we will love others in a fragile and shallow way. So let's not be frightened of God's spotlight in our lives. Let's not be frightened of going to that place where we're stripped back and saying, Jesus, show me. Maybe I'm blind to it. Maybe like Peter, didn't want to bring it out into the open. And we say, Spirit, show me. What is it? What am I hiding? What's stopping me having this deep level of intimacy with you? And it was very necessary for Peter, as a leader of Christ's church. Peter is going to feed Christ's sheep from a place of intimacy. Jesus had said earlier in John, apart from me, you can do nothing. Remain in me, I will remain in you. And that's the place that we feed our relationships from. And if Peter was going to be a true pastor, if he was going to be a true shepherd of his sheep, then he needed that level of intimacy with Jesus. Otherwise, he was going to have nothing to give to anyone else. And it's true in our lives. If we don't feed ourselves from that intimate place of relationship with Jesus, we will have little to feed others with. Jesus needed him to be reinstated back in that place of relationship. But also, Peter had to serve from a place of intimacy, but from a place of humility too. Just like his Savior, he was going to be a wounded shepherd. He was a traitor, but it doesn't stop Jesus wanting to build his church with Peter. That's not the final story. Jesus won't let it be the final story of Peter's life. But he was a traitor, but he betrayed him when Jesus was at his lowest. So he invites him back into relationship. But he almost does it to say, you've got to remember this. The mercy that you've shown, the mercy that you've seen, you lead out of that place, Peter. Become my wounded shepherd, not proud, not the loudmouth, no arrogance. When you're serving my flock, remember and listen to them with compassion. Listen without prejudice. Have a depth of love for them that I have shown you. Yeah. We've got to remember this. When we look to the cross, we remember the mercy that we've been shown. And we're all leaders in some respect in our relationships, in our families, in our places of work, in church. We've got to lead from that place of compassion. We all invite to become wounded shepherds, seeing the scars, knowing the grace that we've been shown, and showing that same grace to others. So come out of hiding and be healed. Christ knows all. He knows where you've been. He knows what you've done. And he might ask the tough questions, but it's with your best interests at heart. It's with his heart of compassion. This is no distant, two-dimensional God asking these questions. It's the lover of your soul. So we're going to spend a short bit of time, and I love these intimate encounters with Jesus because it makes me think, who is Jesus to me? And who God is revealed in these spaces. And who I am is revealed in the way that I respond to him. And when Jesus looks at me in the eyes and says, do you love me? How do I answer? How do you answer? Is there stuff that you instinctively want to hold back? Is there stuff that you instinctively want to keep in the shadows and say, God, I just don't want you to see that? And Jesus says, I can see it anyway. There's no point in hiding it. Bring it out. Let me deal with it. Let the healing begin. We want to serve others and feed others from that place of intimacy. But we also want to do it in humility. And Jesus says, as I heal you. You know what? You're going to learn how to bring my healing to others too. Let's respond by having an honest conversation with God. And let's feel and understand how we respond to that. Whether we're awkward about it, whether we're nervous about it, or whether we embrace it, or whether we say, finally, Jesus, I've been meaning to talk to you about this for ages, but I just haven't created space in my life. So in the quiet now, before the band come back, you might want to hold out your hands. You might want to close your eyes, you might not. But just imagine Jesus looking into your eyes and simply asking that question, do you love me? How do you respond?